What if I told you there's a single mental habit, just one, a kind of pivot point in your mind, that pretty much determines whether you experience confusion or clarity? Well, today we're diving into some ancient Buddhist texts that point to exactly what that habit is.
So think about this. How does the simple act of paying attention actually create the world we experience? It sounds like a really modern psychological question, doesn't it? But it turns out these ancient teachings pinpoint this one mental act as the absolute key to everything. Here's the core idea. Our mental state, whether we feel peaceful or totally agitated, it isn't just random. Nope. It's the direct result of how we use our attention. It's like in every single moment, our mind is standing at a fork in the road. And here are those two paths right here. On one side, we have what the texts call unwise attention, and that leads straight to mental turmoil. But on the other side, we have wise attention, the path to insight and ultimately freedom. It's the same fundamental act of paying attention, but it takes you to two completely different destinations. Now, to really get this, we need to look at the specific term these texts use. It's a word that really holds the key to this entire process. That Pali word is Manasikāra. It literally means to bring to mind. It's just the basic act of paying attention. And the really crucial point here is that Manasikāra itself is totally neutral. You can think of it like a flashlight. The beam of light isn't good or bad. What matters is where you point it. And listen, this isn't some minor concept tucked away in a footnote. The texts, like this quote from the Majjhima Nikāya, put attention right up there with feeling, perception, and intention. It's one of the fundamental building blocks of our reality, a core function of the mind. Okay, so what happens when we point that flashlight of attention, carelessly? That brings us to the first path, which is known as Aññaniso Manasikāra, or unwise attention. This quote is just incredibly direct. Paying attention unwisely doesn't just fail to help you. It actively creates problems. It's the engine that literally generates what the texts call the asava. These are the mental defilements like greed, hatred, and delusion, and it just pours gasoline on any that are already there. Now, you might think that if you achieve some deep state of meditation, you're guaranteed to get profound insights. But the texts show that's just not the case. If a meditator applies unwise attention to their experience, even a powerful, super concentrated mind can lead them to completely wrong conclusions. The experience itself is pure, but the interpretation of it is flawed. So, for example, the Dīgha Nikāya lists specific flawed views that pop up from this. A meditator might experience this vastness of time and conclude, the self and the world must be eternal. Or they might perceive some kind of boundary in their consciousness and declare, the world is finite. It's exactly like having a high-powered microscope, but focusing on a tiny scratch on the lens instead of the actual specimen. You get a very detailed, very clear, but ultimately wrong picture. So if that's the problem, what's the solution? This brings us to the other path, Yoniso Manasikāra, or wise attention, and it's presented as the direct antidote to all of that. This quote is the perfect mirror image of the one we just saw. Wise attention acts like a circuit breaker. It stops new defilements from ever arising, and it systematically dismantles the ones that are already hanging around. It is the mind's essential tool for purification. And just how important is this skill? Well, the texts list it as one of the 4 essential factors for reaching the very first stage of enlightenment. I mean, think about that. You can have wise twins, you can hear the best teachings on earth, but without wise attention, that internal skill of looking at things in the right way, the transformation just doesn't happen. So what does it even mean to look at things in the right way? What does wise attention actually show you? The texts say that the Buddha himself used this very faculty to see the fundamental law of reality. This interconnected, cause and effect nature of everything, a concept known as dependent origination. And this is what that looks like. By applying wise attention, he could see the entire chain of causation that leads to suffering. He saw how one thing conditions the next, how ignorance leads to mental formations, how those formations lead to consciousness, and how that chain just keeps going all the way to aging and death. The key insight here isn't just the individual links in the chain. It's understanding that everything arises in dependence on other things. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Okay, so let's bring all this together. We've been exploring these pretty ancient concepts, but why does any of this matter for us, right here, right now? Why is this single mental habit so incredibly important? Because your attention is not some passive observer. It is the active creator of your experience. Every single moment, it's the pivot. Which way you turn it, wisely or unwisely, determines the entire landscape of your inner world. So let's just break it all down. We've seen that attention, or Manasikāra, is basically a neutral tool. Used unwisely, it creates a world of confusion. But when it's cultivated wisely, it is the direct path to clarity. And the ultimate takeaway is this: the quality of your attention literally determines the quality of your mind. And that brings us to the final question. It's not about the past or the future. The only real power we ever have is right here in this moment. So, where are you going to direct your attention right now?